Hello and welcome to part 18 of the Mickey Head tutorial set. This is David Ward. When last I left you, had gone through and created the shape keys for his mouth area and jaw and all that stuff, making him able to talk or chew food or whatever you want to have him do. There's a few more shape keys we might get into later on as we get into actual specific poses, but for now we've got quite a few all set, so those will work for now. In the meantime, I went through and kind of darkened his hair up a little bit. As you can see here in the hair color, it's a little bit darker, and it renders darker. And then the eyebrows, I made them a little thinner, and it was rendering 8 simple strands per parent strand, and I knocked that down, or it was rendering 10. I knocked it down to 8, and then also the length I set to 0.75. And here's a quick show of what he looks like now. So with this different expression, looks a little bit better. I think the hair might be a little too shiny still yet, but we'll leave it alone for now. But anyways, onward and upwards. Let's go ahead and turn off the shape keys. Go ahead and zero everything out there so it's just that nice neutral expression. And then we'll go turn off the eyebrows and eyelashes. And then we can go ahead and turn off the subsurface as well, just to make things go a little quicker. It won't be that big of a difference, but you know, might as well. So let's go ahead and pop our 3D cursor to the center of the scene. Cursor to center, boom, right there. Pops that down, and I'm going to go ahead and move it back here. I'd like to put it here. However, if I click there, you can see it does a thing called what is it? Stick to the surface type of thing. Let's go. It's going to be in the user preferences to turn it off. It's under the interface cursor depth. That's what it's called. So I'm going to turn that off. So I prefer to be able to put the 3D cursor wherever I want to put it in the scene rather than on top of the model. So I'm going to go Shift S, cursor to center again. We'll go to our side view, go ahead and click back to about where the base of the neck bones would be, and you can see it stays in the middle this time. So good to go. So let's go ahead and Shift A. We're going to add a single bone for the armature. Boom. And let's go ahead and go to our armature settings right here. And actually, I think that was the orange box, the little object tab. And I'm going to set X-ray on. And also I'm going to set the maximum draw type to wire, so it's nice and transparent as we're moving around our scene. A little easier to work with that way. And I also prefer to work with, if we go to our data tab here for the armature, I'm going to go ahead and turn on B-bones. I prefer to work with B-bones because they're more visually appealing to me, and you can reshape them so you don't really need specific shape keys for different bone parts. You can still make, or not shape keys, but bone shapes. You can still make them, but you won't need as many, like for the head and things. I'll show you. So anyways, let's go ahead and move the top of our bone here. We're going to move that up to the top of the head. And then let's go ahead and move this guy down here to where about the base of the shoulders would be. Then I'm going to grab the whole bone itself, W, subdivide. Let me go ahead and turn on my screencast keys. I guess they're not. Blah, blah, blah. They're not defaulted. I need to go ahead and, one of these days, turn that to default start display. There we go. Okay, so we subdivided that once. Go ahead and do it twice. There we go. And now we can move. This will be like the top of the spine. So we'll just move that down to about right there, and then the top of the neck bone area. And you don't want to get that too low. I notice on a few professional things, like the one that comes to mind is Dante's Inferno, the video game. They have his neck joint too far down, and it just looks weird when he moves his head back and forth because it doesn't pivot at the correct point. So the base of the spine, or base of the skull, goes to the top of the neck, which is a lot more up in this area than down in here, which I imagine that's how they rigged Dante and Dante's Inferno. So anyways, you want to get that to a better placement there so it rotates more realistically. Okay, so that's our head, neck, and spine bone. Let's go ahead and name those accordingly. Come up here, item armature, and let's go ahead and name this armature Mickey rig. Or go ahead and call it Mickey head rig, because later on in chapter 2 or later on we'll go ahead and create a body rig and merge them together. But now we go ahead and say head. And grab this one. This one will be neck. And this we'll call spine. Okay. Now a couple of things I want to do before we go into pose mode. Well, I guess we'll need to do this in pose mode. So let's go and do that. We'll go to pose mode now. And pose mode is the mode which you can rotate and actually pose, pardon me, your rig, skeleton bones. Okay, so I got my neck bone. What I have to do in pose mode, go to our bone, or actually our bone settings. Looks like a little cartoon femur type of bone there. And we'll scroll all the way down to the bottom where it says deform. Go ahead and expand that out. I'm going to give it some extra segments, so it'll be able to rotate a little more realistically, a little more gradual rotation. Okay, so now, like I said with the B bones, let's tab back into edit mode, and if you hit Alt-Control-S, you can scale these bones up, like so. You can't do that with any of the other types of bones, but you can do it with B bones. That's why I prefer B bones. And then if you want to make it more narrow, see now it's square, if I want to make it more narrow to kind of fit its head shape, Control-Alt-S, X, and then it only scales it there on the X-axis. So now, it's a nice visual representation that this will control his head. Okay, we can do the same thing down here on the spine. Control-Alt-Shift, scale that up a little bit, and then Control-Alt-S, I said Control-Alt-Shift before, it's Control-Alt-S to scale it up, and then on the X-axis, so we'll get some nice shouldery looking things there. Okay, so now we have our basic rig for the head and shoulders and neck. I want to go ahead and add a couple of bones for his eyeballs. So let's grab one of those eyeballs if we can. There we go. Shift S, put our cursor to selected, so it's right there in the middle of that eyeball. It's actually on the right eyeball. I want to go ahead and do it on the left just for uniformity. I'll create the left side. You know, at this point, we won't be creating a lot of left and right pieces, but I like to do the left side first and then just clone it, duplicate it over to the right side. Okay, so we got our 3D cursor there on the right eyeball. Let's grab our skeleton again, tab in edit mode, Shift A. We'll add another bone. It's kind of hard to see. I'll Z back into solid view. And I'm just going to scale it down. Actually, hit the period button so it's scaling around the 3D cursor right there. So I'll scale it down about like so. And then I'll Alt-Control-S to make it a lot skinnier. Okay. Then I'm going to grab the very tip of it and I'm Shift-S, selection to cursor, and it looks like everything disappeared, but it still selects it. So as long as you don't click out anywhere else, you can still select it. I'm going to grab this green arrow, that's the Y-axis, click and drag it out so it's perfectly straightforward, as you can see. So now he's looking perfectly straight forward there. So I'll grab this one, call this one eyeball.L, eyeball left. Okay. And then also, we want this eyeball to look at something that we can easily control with our rig. So I'm just going to Shift D, duplicate that eyeball, and move it there on the Y-axis, about usually about 1.5 to 2 foot respectively in front of his face. So I'm going to go ahead and Control Comma now, so I'm again rotating around the selection. So I'm going to move that a little bit further. Then I'm going to scale it down to where it's a little flatter, then Control Alt S to make it bigger so it's more like so. So this will be called his look at. So I'm going to call this one look at.L. Okay. And then we'll set it up to where wherever we move this in pose mode, his eyeball bone will follow it. And then therefore his eyeball, once we attach it to the eyeball bone, will also follow it. Okay, so now let's go ahead and grab those two left bones and make sure our 3D cursor is in the center again. Shift S, cursor to center, and tab back in edit mode. Go ahead and hit the period button so we're rotating around that 3D cursor again. And I have those two bones selected, so Shift D to duplicate them. And then I'll just go ahead and click out just to say yes, they're duplicated. Now S to scale, X, -1. So we mirrored that -1 times on the X-axis. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to Control Comma, so we're rotating around the selection. I'm going to select both of these eyeball bones. Shift select the bone itself, there we go. Then select the skull last, Control P, and keep the offset. I'm parenting the two eyeballs to the head and keeping the offset. So now, if I tab back into pose mode, rotate the skull around, you can see those eyeball bones go with it. Now, there's a couple of ways we can do to make the eyeballs look at targets. One of them I usually use is basically we just I can't remember the exact order. I think it's you grab the eyeball bone and then shift select the target and then go Shift I to active bone, and that's obviously the incorrect. I always do it wrong the first time. Select the bone you're wanting to look at and then the eyeball bone, and then Shift I. Add an IK chain to the active bone, and it kind of stretches everything out. But that's no big deal because we can just select that eyeball bone now, go to our bone constraints, and set the chain length to 1. So now, anytime we move this eyeball target around, the eyeball looks at it, as you can see. Okay, the other way to do that is to select the target and then the source and Control-Shift-C, and it'll open up your Add Constraints, and I want to track to. There we go. That's kind of what I do when I track a camera to somewhere. The issues I used to find with this, doesn't look like they're there now, but in the past, whenever you would look at something, the eyeball would kind of twist around on the Z-axis. Looks like it's been fixed since then, so we'll just go ahead and use that this time. So I'm going to kill out that location. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that IK chain. Grab the target and the eyeball, Control-Shift-C, track to. So now I can grab both of these guys, and now the eyeballs can look wherever they're going. Now, one extra thing we can do to make the eyeball movement a little bit easier, one step easier, is to go ahead and add in a main controller for the look at. So what I'm going to do is Shift-D, duplicate this left target, look at target, and just move that over to the center. Tell you what, let's go ahead and Shift-S, cursor, or selection to cursor, because the cursor's there in the center already. Then we'll just move it up, and then go to our side view, and just move that here. Okay, now it's perfectly in the center. Now we can go Control-Alt-S and make that a little bit bigger till about right there. Then Control-Alt-S on the Y-axis. Actually, I guess it'd be the Z-axis, and just kind of make some square binoculars. So now we can select the two look-ats, and then shift select that the main guy last, and Control-P, and go ahead and keep the offset. And let's go ahead and name this one just look at. Instead of look at left or right, it'll be just plain old look at. So now since those two look at bones are targeted to the parented to the main look at, anytime I just move this one look at, both eyeballs will follow along. Okay, so let's go ahead and attach the eyeball meshes to their respective bones. Get in there, shift. Let's go ahead and hide the main head area there, the head bone there, or head mesh. Then we can do this a little easier. So grab the bone, shift select, or grab the eyeball, shift select the bone, Control P, and I want to parent it to the bone. I don't want to do an armature deform, I just want to do the bone. So there we go. Do the same thing on the other eyeball, Control P, bone. Okay, so now when I move the look at target, the eyeballs will follow along with it. If I Alt H. Okay, sorry, I had to pause for a second. Again, as you know, my throat tends to dry out pretty easily, so I had to get some water, coffee. Anyways, so now we unhid the main mesh. You can see that the eyeballs are following the look at. Okay, so now what I want to do is go ahead and add the main mesh to the rig. There's a couple things I want to do first though on the eyeballs. Remember, on the neck bone we added those extra segments in there. Now what I'd like to do is something similar on the eyeball bones. Actually, you know what? I'll leave it as is. I was going to turn off deform so that they didn't deform anything on the mesh, but I will need them to deform the eyelids just a little bit. So I'm going to leave that as is for now, but we can turn off the deform on these look-ats because we don't want to add any extraneous data that we don't need. Okay, so now we can grab the head mesh, shift select just any of the bones, and go Control P, and we'll say armature deform with automatic weights. So we'll go ahead and click that guy. Now if you notice, if we grab our mesh and go to our modifiers tab, we can collapse all these, you can see now armature is down at the very bottom. Now this could prove to be a problem since we have hair and things on here. Go ahead and turn those all on. Since the armature is way down on the bottom of that stack, way down here, if we move things, you'll see the hair does not go with it. And we really need to fix the weight painting on that as well. Very odd looking. But what we need to do is pop that up to the very top of the stack. This is called the stack. So we move that all the way up to the stack, and you can see now the hair follows along with it. Okay, so now obviously what we need to do is fix some of the weight painting. So what we have to do is go ahead and let's turn off all those hair particle sets that we turned on, and we'll go ahead and go to weight paint, and you can get an idea of the influence of each bone. Like for example here, the head bone, it's only controlling 100% the very tip of the top of the head, but it's also controlling some of the back of the head. It's not controlling the front of the face at all. And then the neck bone is pretty decent. And then the shoulder spine is pretty decent. But we need to go ahead and tell the head to control all of the head vertices. So one easy way to do that is just to tab into edit mode, come over here to our data tab, and go ahead and collapse the shape keys, expand the vertex groups, and make sure you have the head vertex group selected. And then we'll come in here, we deselect everything, and then just hit C to open up our selection painter. And just click and drag over everything here. And also want to unhide those teeth, because I definitely want those as part of this group as well. So we'll just paint over everything that needs to be controlled by the head bone. So like so. Then we'll go ahead and assign. And you notice the weight right here is set at 1.0. That means it's going to be 100% added to the head. So now if we come back into weight paint mode, you can see everything's red. And when it's red, that means it's 100% on that vertex group. So we need to do a little bit of a blending between, that's kind of weird, kind of a blending between the two, the neck area and the head area. So we can go to our tools and set blur. So we can just come in here and just kind of blur in between those two, so it's a little bit better transition. We can also make sure that, it's probably under options, yeah, X mirror. Make sure that X mirror is also turned on so it's doing both sides at the same time. Okay, so we'll just come in here and clean this up a little bit. Okay, and one other thing we want to definitely do is make sure that the neck now is not controlling any of the face or parts of the head that it doesn't need to. So we'll go ahead and select that neck vertex group, and you see we need to go ahead and turn it off of the back of the head and the ear and the bottom of the mouth and everything, because if we don't, you rotate it, you can see it still controls some of that, like looks like the bottom teeth as well. So we definitely don't want that. So we'll tab back in edit mode, and everything's still selected that we want on the head. So now, since we have the vertex group of the neck selected, only thing we have to do is say remove, and it'll remove 100%. So we go back to weight paint mode and select the neck bone. You can see all of those are now gone. So we'll just kind of clean that up again with the blur brush there, and now we'll have a nice. Looks probably the shoulder bones probably also are affecting part of the head, so we'll just go ahead and remove that there. And for some reason, not sure why it's doing all that. Let's, I guess the eyeball is probably controlling way too much. So let's just say remove from the eyeball, and I never renamed those, so we'll just remove those there. And then make sure, yeah, there we go. So the eyeballs were controlling way too much. Good to go. So now let's go ahead and rename those as we need to. Micky, actually just come to object mode there. And that's Micky, eyeball.l. This one needs to be eyeball.r. Okay. And then also that look at needs to be lookat.r. There we go. Okay, so now, since we turned off I can't think of the word. What's the word, self? Come on. The influence of it's such an easy word, why couldn't I think of it? Of the eyeball bones on the rest of the head. You can see now the head bone controls everything. And since we add those extra vertices or extra segments to the neck, it now does a little bit better twist than if it didn't have any at all. So I'll show you what it looks like without any segments. It's just one. I mean, it looks okay, but it looks like it gets a little thinner here. So if we give it extra segments, oops, not the head, the neck, there we go. Extra segments, you can see it's more of a gradual change, so that really helps the neck look more organic. Okay, so we'll go ahead and kill those out. And trying to think if there's anything else I want to go over. Yeah, the eyeball bones. I turned off their influence altogether on the whole head, but I want to go ahead and add just a little bit so that when we move the eyes, the eyelids kind of follow along a little bit with the motion of the eyeball, which underneath. I mean, it'll be faking it, but it'll look a little bit more realistic. So we'll go ahead and grab the head mesh, go back to weight paint view, and let's go turn our tool to add and set the weight down to about, let's try 0.25, just 1/4%. So now I'll make the brush a little bigger, and we'll just do a quick little, make sure, oh, we have the wrong bone selected first of all. So let's go and grab that eyeball bone, and then we'll just click in here just a little bit. Just get a little bit of that greenish tint, light blue in here. And then it should have done the same thing on the other side. Since we named that to .r instead of L.001 or whatever, it copied over the little bit that we painted here, mirrored it over. So that's why it's important to keep your left and right bones named accordingly. So now, if I come back to object mode, you can see when we grab that look at target, you can look at the eyelids are following the eyeball a little bit. So you can make it a little more extreme if you like. Go ahead and weight paint. Just go ahead and make sure you got that eyeball selected. Just a little bit more. Okay, then back to object mode, and see how much more natural that looks when he's looking around. Also, I can see that when we were adding that influence to the eyelid area, it must have gone through the eye opening to the back of his head. So one way we can check that out is to tab back in edit mode, deselect everything, go to our object tab here and go to eyeball.l and say select, and you see that's selecting everything that bone is influencing, and we don't want it to influence any of this area here. So I'm going to hit my C button, Alt click, or hold down Alt and then just click over the eyes because we want it to influence that, but we don't want it to do that. So we'll just say remove, and then do the same thing on the other side, deselect everything, select that, deselect the eyes, and then remove. So now we'll go to weight paint mode. You can see left and right, they're only affecting the eyeball area rather than the neck and things. So, oy vey, very dry throat today. Okay, so that's that. One thing I just remembered when I was telling you about the shape keys in part 15 and 16, or was it 16 and 17? 16 and 17. I mentioned if you accidentally move part of the back of the head by accident in one of the shapes, it's easy to fix that. So let's see if we did that on any of these. So let's just go through here one by one. That one looks okay. In any case, if you did one, probably in the mouth area is more. Say you did something here, and, well, I'll just go ahead and do that. Jaw down, for example. We'll tab into edit mode. And this is jaw down. Say you, on accident, when you were selecting from the front, you selected something in the back as well, and moved, say, this one down a little bit, like so. And you go, jaw down. Oh no, it's moving the back of the head too. It's easy to fix. All you gotta do, come up to basis, and just tab into edit mode and select everything here in the back that doesn't need to move at all. And just go, you can hit the space bar and type in shape propagate. You can type that in, or you can just go ahead and hit shape propagate. And that'll kind of delete that motion of those vertices from every keyframe. Now you want to be careful, because if you're like, oh, I messed up on the eye, let me do the shape propagate. That'll kill it on every keyframe. So you want to make sure you only do it if that's exactly where you want to do it. So now you can see that jaw down does not affect that. Okay, so just a quick little tip there that I promised I'd say. Okay, so now we got our basic head rig all set, and he's looking. So let's just, from our camera perspective here, let's go ahead and just put him kind of in a nice 3/4 view while he's looking over at us, like so. Then maybe kind of give him just a half grin, smile on the right side, just a bit. Maybe his eyebrow up a little bit on the right side. Brow upright. There we go. Okay, and then I'll do a quick render of that. I'll go ahead and pause recording so you don't have to sit through the whole thing. Be right back. And here we go. So he's got it. It's kind of a weird looking expression, but we can play with getting that set up later on, or not. Either way. Anyways, that's how we are able to add movement to his head. So that's that. That's going to be it for part 18. In part 19, we'll go a little further with this rigging and add in some more bones that we can actually control all of these shape keys with, called shape key drivers. So again, that's going to be it for part 18. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in part 19.